Hello everyone, welcome to this week's review of Real Housewives of New York. Now, it didn't come on last week, but for some reason it feels like it's been so long. I don't know what it is. Maybe because there's so many reality shows out right now that it feels like it's been forever, even though it's just been a week. So, I don't know. I usually enjoy Real Housewives of New York. It is my favorite out of the franchise because I feel like they're the most consistent when it comes to bringing us content. They have the perfect balance of, giving us drama, giving us tension within the group, yet they're funny and can be lighthearted. Like Sonia is crazy. That sometimes can be a bad thing. However, she can also be hilarious, right? Same with Ramona. Ramona is terrible, but she could also be really funny, right? They give us moments. But this season, I don't know. It's not that it's terrible, but here's the thing. When you add new cast members in, the issue that Bravo seems to be having is that you can't just take random people and bring them together and expect the group to have chemistry, Although this season isn't terrible, it's starting to kind of look like other franchises. For example, Atlanta, or even Dallas, Orange County as well, where you're just taking random people and you're bringing them together and hoping that there's chemistry. I think Beverly Hills, they struggled a bit, but right now I do feel like they're in a good space because it's like a perfect balance of new people, people that have been there, people that have long-term relationships, so there is a balance. It doesn't feel so out of place. But New York, it's very clear that they're trying to transition some of the ladies out, diversify the cast, which they should have been working on long time ago, because it doesn't make sense to me. New York is supposed to be one of the most diverse cities in the world, and you're telling me you can only find white women? And don't get me wrong, I enjoy watching Ramona, I enjoy watching Sonia. LuAnn, I don't know so much, but I do enjoy these women, Dorinda. But it's been long overdue for diversity, right? The problem is that you're just picking one person kind of as a token and plucking them in a situation, and she's not really friends with any of the ladies. She kind of knows Leah, and that's it. So it feels awkward. And the thing with Ebony, I feel like she can be kind of preachy. Not that she's wrong with what she has to say, but she can feel kind of like a spokesperson, and we're not really getting to know her, and she's not really gelling with the ladies. But I don't think that's entirely her fault. I think it's production. So that's why I'm glad when, finally, Rashaan, like how many episodes into the season are we introduced to her, right? She should have been brought on from the very beginning. So with Rashaan coming on, although it is kind of the same thing of just bringing on a random person, because I don't believe her and Ramona are friends like that. Obviously, the show wanted her, the production probably made Ramona befriend her, right? But at least now we're getting more of a balance. So let's just dive right into the review. So it starts off with Ebony getting ready, right? And I don't know how the hairstylist could wear a mask then a shield, then she's wearing a cape. Like, that's just too much. Like, I feel uncomfortable with just wearing a mask. I couldn't imagine wearing all that and doing someone's hair for potentially an hour or so. Like, that's crazy to me, right? But I guess you gotta do what you gotta do. They're in New York, so you have to be extra safe. So Ebony is throwing this function for the ladies, a night in Harlem. And I'm Canadian, right? So I'm not American. I have been to Manhattan and Brooklyn, but like not for very long, right? For short periods of time. But it's just kind of odd to me that you've been in the city for not even years, decades at this point, and you don't venture out of your bubble. Like, why wouldn't you visit Brooklyn or Harlem or the Bronx or all these other places just to say that you've been there? You've seen what's going on. Like, this is your neighborhood, right? This is not even like another state, okay? Another country is like it's right there. And the fact that you didn't even bother because you feel like there's nothing there for you to explore is kind of odd to me. Like, you would go to the Hamptons, right? So why wouldn't you go to Harlem? Harlem is a lot closer. So it's just weird that a lot of the ladies don't really venture out of their safety zones. So it is what it is. So finally, it's the night of the event, and finally, like I said, we're introduced to Rashaan. And from the 5 seconds of being introduced to her, I like her. I think she'll be good, right? I don't know how old she is, but she comes off as an older woman, and that makes sense to me. I don't think that when you're revamping these housewife shows that you necessarily need to go younger. I think the most entertaining ladies on these housewife shows tend to be the older women. I would love to continue to see that perspective, that experience. I don't think they necessarily need to go younger, or everybody has to be young or in the early 30s. Like, I want to see women in the 40s. I want to see women in their 50s. I want to see women in their 60s as well. But it does have to make sense as a collective. They have to have that chemistry. So I feel like Rashaan, being an older woman, or kind of coming off as an older woman, she's going to mesh well with Ramona and Sonia and LuAnns. She's going to make more sense. Where Leia and Ebony, they can make it work, but you can kind of feel that the age gap between the two groups it's too much, and they're not really connecting with each other. Ebony. The road to hell is paved in good intentions, right? I understand what she's trying to do, but like Sonia was saying, she's a broadcaster, she's a mouthpiece. It very much feels like she's lecturing the ladies, and it is sucking the air out of the room. I understand you want to show them the Harlem culture, right? You want to educate them, but you are their quote unquote friend, right? You're not their teacher. If you want to share Harlem with them, you could have taken them somewhere and let them experience it, right? Maybe a concert, maybe a museum, something more interactive where it's not you just lecturing them. Initially, right, I thought giving out the candles was a great idea, but it just went on, and I feel bad for even saying it because I know our heart is in the right place, but we want to see Ebony the person. We do not want to see the representative. We do not want to see the voice for all Black people. Like, you are not responsible for educating Ramona. Ramona is a grown woman, right? In her 60s. If she wanted to learn something, she could, right? She could pick up a book. She could go to Harlem. She's been in New York City for how many decades? And she's never been to Harlem. So Ebony, that's not your responsibility to educate them or to make them see. Just be yourself. Of course you can share who you are, but it's not your job to educate everybody. And I don't want to say it's boring, but we don't come to Real Housewives of New York for that, right? We come for the interaction and the group dynamic. So I wish you would just relax a little bit and just let us see Ebony, the person, the individual. And this is why I'm happy that Rashaan is there. So it's not all on Ebony to be the token and represent all Black women. Like, you have another Black woman in the cast. So it shows you that just because both parties are Black doesn't mean that they think the same. That doesn't mean they go about life in the same way. So I like that because, you know, even Leia was saying like, it's a little too much in the confessionals, right? But Leia, Ramona, Sonia, they're not going to say something directly to Ebony. They're not going to say, hey, can you just calm down, or this is a little too much, because they don't want to look racist, right? And that's not saying that some of these ladies aren't, because they are. We all know that, right? But they're, you know, they're very concerned about their image. Like Ramona being like, oh, we have to kind of divide us up because we can't have all the Black girls standing next to each other and all the white girls standing next to each other, or it's going to look weird in the picture, right? So people like Ramona, they're very concerned with the image and how they look, but it isn't genuine, or it's very surface, right? So of course they're not going to call her out because they don't want to look a certain way. They're not going to have certain conversations with her. So it's nice that we have Rashaan, because Rashaan can feel a little bit more comfortable with, I don't want to say checking her, but like maybe kind of getting her to relax a little bit, right? I don't want Ebony to lose all of that kind of, because I think it is useful for her to give us information, not just for the other ladies, but for the audience, and introduce the audience to things that they may not come across. So I do think there's value in that, but there is a balance, right? So Rashaan, during the dinner, she makes the comment of, you know, we're all the same. And I see both sides, right? We are quote unquote all the same, but we are treated differently. However, I get what Rashaan was saying, that no one is inferior or superior innately, right? We are all different but equal. However, that's not how we're treated in this world. You know, people want to be superior, and in order to do that, they need to make someone inferior out of their own insecurity, or need to prove themselves because they don't feel good enough. So the only way they can feel good enough is by bringing other people down and feeding and leeching off of them, right? So I get what Rashaan was saying, and I also get Ebony's perspective is like, you are undermining me, and she is right. Like, these ladies really are like, you know, a common saying is, I don't see color. You can be blue, green, purple, red, whatever. We're all the same. And we know that that phrase is often used to dismiss the experience of Black people. Like, oh, what are you talking about? There's no racism. You're not treated differently. You just gotta work hard. You just gotta, it can be dismissive. So I get both sides. And that's why it's great not to just have a token. That's why it's great to have diverse voices. Like, if we can have a cast of all white women on the Real Housewives of New York. It's not, if it's Real Housewives of Orange County, okay, then maybe I can understand there being an all-white cast, right? Atlanta, maybe, yes, I can understand it being an all-black cast, right? I understand that, yes, you're gonna get maybe a monolithic group in some of these regions, but you're not gonna tell me Real Housewives of New York is all white. So if white women can get that diverse representation, then Black women should also get that opportunity, right? Just like in Atlanta, all the Black women in Atlanta don't think the same. All the white women on Real Housewives of New York don't think the same, right? There's variety of opinions and viewpoints. So it's great to see. And yes, at first it may feel awkward and uncomfortable. Like, I admit, it did feel awkward to see a Black person in Real Housewives of New York, because for so long I was just used to seeing white women. So at first, yes, it is going to be awkward, it's going to be uncomfortable, but I guess we have to look at, and what I have to look at and check in myself is like, why is this uncomfortable to see? This shouldn't be uncomfortable. And yes, we're going to have to sit in this for a moment. We're going to have to feel that awkwardness, but it will pass, right? We will get used to it. They'll figure out the right configuration. I hope they continue to add, more diverse people on the show, especially for Real Housewives of New York. Ramona. She's so full of it. Like, I just know, I don't know for sure, but I know that the only reason she's leaving that party is because she has a date. If you watch previous seasons, you know how she is. She stays for 5 minutes so she can get her screen time, and then poof, she's gone because she has a date in Manhattan, okay? But she can't tell Ebony, oh, sorry, I'm going to be ditching your event, like she could tell Sonia or LuAnn or Dorinda. I remember Dorinda used to get pissed when she would do that. Like, she would tell them straight up, I have a hot date, I gotta go. But she won't tell Ebony, that, right? Because Ramona is trying to be very, very careful. Very, very careful. So at the party, Leia and Rashaan have a moment, right? And Leia is talking about her grandmother passing. And Rashaan lets Leia know, like, I was diagnosed with a terminal cancer. They told me I was going to die. But I beat it, I'm still here. And it's made me a better person. I used to be a people pleaser. Now I don't care anymore. I just say whatever I want. I do whatever I want, because life is too short. I am absolutely loving Rashaan right now. I know it's only been maybe 3 minutes of her, but I'm enjoying her. I'm enjoying what she could potentially bring to the show. And she does seem like one of those kooky characters, like a Sonia, like a Ramona, even like a LuAnn. So I think she'll fit in very well. And I did enjoy that moment because so many times we care so much about what other people think, and we live our life based off of others' expectations of us. So it's really nice to see someone that is really embracing life and really doing what they want. And I think it's a great message to share with the audience. So I'm loving Rashaan so far. So Leia and Ebony go for lunch after the event. And oh my gosh, for someone, Leia always proclaims that she's so outspoken. She tells it like it is. But you can tell Leia was just so uncomfortable with this conversation. She was so careful because in her confessionals, right, she can communicate very clearly what it is, right? But when it came to speaking to Ebony face to face, she was so scared to say the wrong thing to her. And it's hard, right? It's very nuanced because you can tell this is who Ebony is, right? But like I said before, it can come off as you're lecturing to the other ladies versus trying to actually get to know them and connect with them. But I wouldn't put that completely on Ebony because the reality of the situation, let's be real, in real life, Ebony would not really be hanging out with the Ramona. Ramona would not be hanging out with the Ebony. You know, same with Sonia, same with LuAnn, same with Dorinda, same, like Bethany Frankel even. Like a lot of these ladies, you can tell that they're just in their bubble. And being on a show, it's a reality show, this is an unnatural situation. So it's just, it's not really fitting because I feel like for Ebony to kind of mesh with these ladies, she would have to kind of lose a bit of who she is. And for those ladies, for Ramona and Sonia and so on, for them to mesh with Ebony, they kind of have to put on this front, you know? So moving forward, they need to figure out how this cast is going to work because I don't really think it's anyone's fault per se. I just think it's the configuration of the group. So the next scene, LuAnns Daughter comes over and basically they talk about being sober. It seems like both LuAnn and her daughter have had issues with alcohol, so they're both refraining from drinking. And this is, I don't know, this is probably the most vulnerable I've seen LuAnn, the most humble, and the most likable, right? I feel like in this moment, she really took accountability for the hurt that she put her daughter through and her son. Because I remember she was allegedly wanting to take, money out of their trust so she could buy a house in the Hamptons and like kind of doing crazy things like that because she was under the influence. She also speaks on, and I think we knew this, but I'm not too sure, about her father and how he also had a problem with drinking. So it is just so funny, across 3 generations, all 3 are dealing with the same issue. And you know how it is when you're young, you say, oh, I'm not going to be like my parents, I'm going to be different. And as you get older and you go through life, you start to see patterns develop and you start to see similarities and realize, oh my gosh, I'm becoming my parent. I'm becoming the very same thing that I didn't want to be. So breaking generational curses is an active thing. It's not passive, right? And if you been raised or grew up in a situation that was not entirely healthy, you definitely have to be proactive in certain things, because I don't want to say that's your default, but that's how you learn That's how you learn to deal with certain situations, by watching your parents or guardians or the adults in your life. So if you haven't really sought out any other way, without knowing it, you will react the same things, because that's what you know. When you have a difficult time, when you're struggling, when you're unsure of yourself, okay, what do? You drink. Why? Because that's how my father dealt with it. That's how my mother dealt with it. They dealt with it through drinking or drugs or yelling or screaming or whatever it is, whatever maladaptive behavior. That's how they dealt with the situation. So that's the only tool available to you, right? So you have to be proactive and find other ways to cope when you do go through difficult times, because that's life, right? You're not always going to get what you want. Things are not always going to go your way. You are going to have conflict. You are going to have disagreements. It's not about avoiding those things and creating this perfect life where you never get challenged in any way. It's more so about, when these situations arise, how do you cope? How do you deal with them? How do you face them? Because when LuAnn and the whole thing with Tom and that didn't work out, she had a break, which is completely understandable that she had a breakdown. But that's part of life. Sometimes romances don't work out. And she also has to look at, where was she emotionally to kind of put herself in that situation with Tom? Because, everybody knew, the audience knew that he wasn't faithful to her. So, that's life. We all make mistakes. You can't go back. All you can do is take the lessons from them and try to be a better person and a more loving person, not only to other people, but to yourself. So, Ebony comes over to Ramona's home, right? And of course, in true Ebony fashion, she starts talking about politics right away, right? As soon as she sits down and says, the way the election is going, it seems like we're gonna have our first female vice president, and that's a great thing. Immediately, Ramona is triggered, right? Because it's very, very obvious that Ramona is a Trump supporter. But she doesn't want to say she's a Trump supporter for obvious reasons, right? And we see how Bravo is going. She doesn't want to be labeled a racist, which, she is, let's be real, okay? She doesn't want that label. She doesn't want to get kicked off the show because she likes being on the show. She likes the attention. She likes the checks. So she wants to secure her spot. So she's not going to isolate anybody in the audience by saying things that they don't want to hear, right? Because Trump is not very popular. But for Ebony, she's thinking, oh, well, Kamala, she's a woman, I'm a woman, Ramona's a woman, we're a cast of women, so we should be able to relate and connect on that. But Ramona is not here for it, right? And Ramona's like, don't talk about politics, it's too much. But then she comes and sits down and says, well, I Googled white fragility and I did this and I Googled this and I Googled that. And then Ramona says, oh, I know the first female millionaire was E.J. Walker. And then Ebony's like, it's C.J. Walker. And then Ramona loses it, like, oh no, don't correct me, you're lecturing me, da 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 da. And she goes off to her bedroom, and she needs a moment to cool down. She even says, well, I'm going and I'm leaving. But it's her house. This is her home. So where are you going? You should be kicking Ebony out. So Ramona is so triggered and so fragile. Yes, fragile and frazzled that she is leaving her own home. That's how uncomfortable Ramona is in this moment. And I hate to say I see both sides in this situation, but here's my problem with Ramona, because I already spoke on Ebony, right? So I'm not going to keep repeating the same thing with Ebony. Here's my problem with Ramona. Just be real. That's the thing. You just want to look a certain way at a superficial level, right? But we all see through you. We all know that you're a Trump supporter, right? Or if you're not a Trump supporter, you're not for Biden, right? We know. Just be honest. Just be a little bit honest. That's it. Instead of just doing this whole like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. Because that's where the white privilege comes into play. And Ebony is right. You have the luxury of being like, I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to know. I can't do this. It's too much. You can do that and be in a place of privilege and have there be no consequence for you. The stakes are not high, so you get to walk away. But for someone like Ebony and others like her, this is a huge deal. This is a big, huge deal. You know, to get Trump out of office. Maybe not to elect Biden, but to get him out. This is a serious issue. So, of course, it's going to be a hot topic. Of course, it's going to be something that Ebony is going to want to speak about. And if you're going to be friends with someone, right, like Ebony was saying, there needs to be authenticity, right? It can't just be superficial. Because this is who Ebony is, and she can't just ignore it and pretend it doesn't exist. So Ramona has to understand that. And I think before, when there was an all-white cast, it was easy for them to avoid these certain topics. But as the cast gets more diverse, Ramona is going to have to face these conversations, and she can't just run away or not deal with them, because if she's so concerned with her image, running away and not dealing with that is not going to make you look good. And it's pretty much confirming everything Ebony was saying. And I really like the way, I'm going to give credit to Ebony, I like the way she handled the situation, right? You know, she was relaxed, she was calm, Ramona was jumping here, jumping there. And then by the end of it, they were able to kind of come together. And this was a good scene, right? It was a real moment. We got a real conversation. But then at the end of it, I don't know if there was any real resolve, but it seems like, okay, maybe they can move forward, and maybe they can move forward in a better place. So that was a great scene. It was funny, you know, for the wrong reasons, thanks to Ramona. It was funny, and it's something that we can all relate to. So I am hard on Ebony because sometimes she can be too much, but at the same point, it's still very necessary to have these moments and to have these conversations. So I am glad that Ebony is part of the cast. I would just like to get to know her more as a person, like I said, instead of as a teacher. So overall, this was a good episode, actually. I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to seeing more of Rashaan. So that's all. See you guys. Bye.